Welcome to another episode of the Mashup 233. Social media, traditional media, increasingly like everything else, the lines are getting blurred. And we have an active social media world where people are building brands, building engagement, building solid products and selling them to the world, particularly in this generation. And so we are going to look at social media engagement, particularly for creatives, and how best we can utilize it as a tool to earn a good income. So today with me, I have one of our homies, Mashapa, Micah. Yeah. He's back on our set. And what's up? What's good?
Yeah, it's always great to
awesome
be here. So yeah, thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Social media seems to be a getaway for so many people. Like it's a safe place. Older people would bash it and make it look like, social media is about, but why is it such a relaxant for creatives? Why is it a safe place for creatives?
Yeah, I think fundamentally as human beings, being social is part of who we are.
Right.
And for creatives, we are more in tune with our, the part of us that's tied to creating things. And once you create things, you want to be able to share that with other people. So social media provides us that avenue to be able to interact with people that otherwise you wouldn't have met physically or in person. So it's a good, outlet to pour out your creative work and also get feedback from other people and build a community around the things that you love. So I think that that's one of the reasons why creatives enjoy social media or utilizing social media a lot, or one of the reasons why it should be relevant to you as a creative if you already aren't taking advantage of social media.
No, creating can be difficult. I mean, you would know that. I mean, creating is like, it takes a lot of work, as much as people don't give credit for. Why should I add, in addition to like all the stuff that is going through my head, why should I add like a knowledge of social media? Like what's importance is it to me? Like,
all right, that's a good question to ask, but I think it's essential because as a creative person, like I mentioned earlier, you wouldn't want to create a piece of work and then have no eyeballs to it or have no one interacting with it whatsoever. Aside work that probably is skewed towards specific clients that you can't share necessarily with other people, you would want people to be able to appreciate the hard work and the effort you've put into the content you've created. So it only makes sense to put it out there. Now, it's two ways around it. You could either acquire the knowledge in addition to what you know as a creative, or you could outsource that aspect of the work to somebody who's experienced in it. Either way, you need that if you're looking to grow your brand, your personal brand as a creative, or your business whatsoever.
But come on, like I'm creating. I don't like. All I know is what I know how to do. Right. I'm not even earning money for it in the first place. And you're telling me I should outsource to someone else, and why should? How do you want me to do that?
Yeah, so it
do I
depends
go and take a loan or?
It depends on what stage you are at, as a creator, because somebody probably has been depends like what space you are in, doing stuff for a couple of years, probably had a few clients, had some income to their disposal. That's a different level. So somebody like that can afford to outsource part of the work to somebody else. But if you're starting out as a creator, you don't
particularly with a starter.
You're starting out, you don't have like that funding or that money to spend. It's very, very useful to be able to learn or pick up on those skills yourself and then actually work with that. The reason is that by doing so and starting to put out yourself properly on social media, you accelerate the rate at which you're able to get, say, if you're searching for clients forever, for instance, you're able to accelerate the rate at which you're likely to get new clients for the work that you do. Even if it's just building a community around the things that you do, putting that work out there and learning how to do that properly also helps you reach more people who would appreciate your content that you're putting out. And subsequently, those people could end up in, like, as we discuss as we go along, in certain situations that could actually end up bringing you revenue of some sort. So
yeah, but how do I, like, I'm I've
So
started.
practical steps, right?
Yeah, that
All right,
started
so-
afresh. Like, how do I take? I'm on Instagram.
Yeah.
Like, I've been told, okay, I have to put up an Instagram page, or I have
Yeah.
to get on TikTok, or
Yeah.
I have to be on.
That's great.
These days, Facebook is for the oldies, right?
I mean, that's what they say,
Yeah.
but you'd be surprised at the things you could do with Facebook,
Right.
depending on what space you're in as well.
Right. So, like, I've started.
All right.
How do I increase that following?
Okay, so
Right.
I normally put this into about 3 or 4 phases.
Mm.
So the why behind it, the how behind it, what and what else, right? So when we look at why, you should, as a creative, when you touch social media, it should always come from a place of sincerity.
Okay.
Right. One mistake I see people do, especially when they start creating content for platforms like YouTube, they're like, I'm making so many videos, I'm not getting views, people are not liking, they're not subscribing, what's going on, right? And you talk to some of them, they're like, yeah, I want the YouTube money, Charlie, I want to get the money, you know? And it's where the focus is. So you realize that it ends up interrupting or interfering with the quality of content they put out.
Okay.
And for creatives and social media, the intersecting place where growth happens, or where you start your journey from, is content. Content is king.
Right.
Quality over quantity. You know, you need to be consistent, but the content needs to be quality. So you need to ask yourself, why am I doing this? Am I doing it because, okay, I know how to do these things and I feel like more people appreciate this? Or am I doing it because, Charlie, I've heard that if you do this, you're going to get the money? Of course, at some point, you'd need to, you might be doing certain things mainly because you want to increase the number of clients you have or revenue. There's nothing wrong with that. But your content definitely has to be quality. So in terms of why, you need to understand why you're doing that. I don't know if I should just jump into the how and the other stuff, and then before we discuss, or I could just go ahead and add a few things. Sure. So one other thing with the why is sometimes people ask creatives, like we talk to them and they're like, oh, I know, but I have like 1,000 followers. Why do I need to get to like 10,000? And I tell them it's not about the numbers. Right, growing your audience, it's not necessarily about the numbers, but it's about the opportunity that comes to you from reaching out to more people.
Okay.
Because if you have, let's say, 1 out of 1,000 people reaching out to you for a commission of some sort, if you have 10,000 people, you have about 10 times more the opportunity for people to reach out to you.
It's a numbers game, really.
So yes, it's a numbers game for the opportunity that comes with it, but not a numbers game for the sake of numbers.
Okay,
Yes.
I feel it.
So,
Okay, I see your
yes.
point. Okay.
In that point. But then when it comes to the how, that's an important one. Picking the platform you want to work with, right? So, for instance, if you are you do a lot of graphic design, right? You want to find a platform that, or let's say you do digital illustrations. You want to pick a social media platform where the community is more aligned to that type of content, because then you have a better chance of growing on that platform, reaching more people, and people actually appreciating the content. It's going to be hard for you to do well if you don't skew your content for the particular platform.
Okay.
Different platforms do better with different types of content. If you take Pinterest, more of images, they're trying to give videos a boost now, but images tend to do better on Pinterest. You know, so if you're an interior designer, for instance, and you have some past work you've done, it would be a great idea to put that on Pinterest, Instagram, possibly Facebook, but heavily on Instagram, Pinterest. That'll do you good. If you're a video creator, you definitely want to look at the platforms that are heavy on video: TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and not just putting out your content, but making sure your content is formatted for those platforms, right? That's a cardinal mistake some people do. They're like, okay, I'm a creative. Let's say I'm doing photography, right? So I do some behind the scenes stuff with my crew. I have the final photography work out. And then let's say the video is formatted for YouTube, right? They go on TikTok, they just put the same formatted size.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, without taking into consideration the dynamics on that platform. You know, because on TikTok, you want to be considerate of trends, of music that's, you know, trending on there. You know, so if you're going to do it, you have to do it right. So platform is very, very important. I feel like you have a question, so you can ask.
No, you go on. I'll ask as we go on.
All right. So
you talked about the why and the how, right?
So I'm on the how now.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the how now. So that's understanding the platform to pick, and then also understanding the relevance of building a community. You know, so oftentimes people look, I mean, not oftentimes, but I think a mistake some creatives do is to focus more on their followers as just statistics rather than people that care enough about their content and I'll follow them, because it makes a ton of difference once you care about your followers, because you're able to, especially in the beginning, it's very, very important in the beginning stages, because having loyal followers at the start, it's very, 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 very key to how quickly or how well your page grows, So you need to pay attention to your followers, listen to what they're saying about your content, listen to what they want to see, take some polls on your story whatsoever. So if you're starting out, you can start out with your page. Like I said earlier, find out what would be suitable for your content or what you're producing. And then once you figure that out, start putting out good content, quality content that will be relevant to your audience and also formatted properly for that platform. And I think with time, you need to devise a social media strategy for yourself as a creative on social media.
Before we come to that, you're talking about the money. I think a lot of people want, I mean, it's not they want, but you're creating stuff and you've stuff of value, right? And you feel like you deserve some sort of remuneration or appreciation for that.
Of course.
And so there are different platforms. We have Patreon, we have even on the video platforms, some of them do monetize their music as well and things like that. But the problem is in Africa, it's so difficult to monetize content. And it seems like this big, that's the elephant in the room. Every creator is creating, but they really don't know what to do to, make money. Case in point. So I know some platforms which are very popular have explicit statements that say we don't monetize content in this region.
Okay.
Which is Africa, for example. So how do you go about that? Is it that you don't create at all, or you create and then find ways? How know?
That's a very, very good point you've mentioned. It's something that we still face here, even across board, not just with creatives, but in general. Like some platforms, it's very, very hard for you to get the access to be able to monetize. But what the trend I've observed over the past few years, not only with Ghanaian creators, but also with Nigerian creators, right, is oftentimes the trajectory is like this. You start out as a passion project, right? Obviously born out of the need for something or your passion or interest whatsoever. You churn out a lot of content, a lot of good content over the period of time. Now, what you want to do to be able to make room or to accommodate the lack of these platforms allowing you to monetize is once you build a strong enough following, two things normally happen, right? Either you end up having some collaborations with some brands or some businesses, or you could also use that as an avenue to acquire new clients that you can actually move from the passion stage to actually servicing, providing them with a service, right? So
how consistent can you be with passion when there's no?
Yes, so it's more of a thing of sacrifice, right?
I get
so you just have to sacrifice initially.
That's why it has to be passion, really.
It has to be passion,
otherwise you stop.
Yeah, and sometimes so you need to see where you can cut costs at the start. You might not have everything. So let's say you'd want a nice studio setup for your videos and everything. You could start with your phone,
right?
In the meantime, start with your phone, put out content.
Right.
If it's good enough, you start to build a following eventually. Right. But I think aside that, at least with YouTube, you could start making some revenue off YouTube, I know. But all the same, it always ties down to the type of content you make, because different creators make different types of content. Music, it's a bit tricky, but I think with audio, it's a bit tricky for most people. But overall, no matter the creative space you're in, if you're able to build a large following enough, right, you'll be able to. And that brings me to a point that I need to make. In creating the content as a creative person, if you realize that, okay, with this direction I'm going, I might not be able to monetize directly from the platform. What you want to do is look at the type of content that potential partners might create or might need around their products and tailor what you're creating along those lines to suit that, right? So there's one person that I admire the type of content she does, so it's Hyatt Reader. And sometimes what she'll do is she'll pick a product from a company that she might most likely want to work with. I'm not saying that's what she does, but it happens that sometimes the video she does, she ends up working with those brands, right? And that's an honest review of the product in a very, very, very good reel or video format. And eventually ends up that, okay, fine, we are willing to work with you because we love the content you're putting out. We love the following you have, and it builds up from there.
So do you focus on monetization? Okay, you said passion.
Yeah.
Okay. So you must build that passion, from what I understand. You
Yeah.
build that passion to the point where it creates a community on
Yeah.
its own. And that community sort of pays for, not pays, but like it
Sort of supports
supports like the work you're
content
doing.
you're creating. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So that's beautiful.
Yeah, I think one other thing I would add is also to have a strategy in mind, a social media strategy, because that is very important. Because if you have a strategy, you know that, okay, I intend to monetize at this point, so I need to do A, B, C, D to get to that place, right? Or I intend to monetize straight away, so my content is skewed towards this particular direction. So a strategy is very, very important. There are videos on YouTube you could watch on how to develop a social media strategy, but it's something that's very, very necessary that I feel sometimes as creatives don't pay much attention
So
to.
strategy, by way of strategy, you mean
Yeah.
like so determining that, okay, I want to post this number of times.
Yeah.
This is how it's going to look at every point in time. Is that
Yeah,
what
so
it is?
basically everything from the type of content you're putting out, the platforms you're using, when you're putting them out, frequency of posting,
Okay,
what analytics you want to look at.
Okay.
Are you looking at the growth in your followers? Are you looking at the growth in your engagement? Are you looking at just overall reach of your content, just to be able to guide you along the way,
Right.
because one thing for us creators is you want to know that the work you're putting out there is being appreciated
True.
by the people that are consuming it. So it just
that's
helps. It just helps you to be able to plan things much better.
So, I mean, these days, given like I keep on talking about the generation, because they are the biggest consumers of what creatives do produce, and increasingly you have a shorter attention span. So a lot of things are getting video heavy as well in order to grab attention.
Yeah.
Now, you're not a typical video person, right? You're not a typical, but you're a creator.
Yeah.
But you realize that there's a need to do a little video. How do you
little
overcome
video.
that?
All right, that's a very good question.
Yeah, how do you overcome that obstacle? Yeah.
That's a very good question. So I know there are people that usually will be like, I'm not a video person, so do I have to film my face?
Yeah.
But the good or interesting thing about content these days is the world has become a bit more open to different forms of content, right? So say you make cooking videos, right? And you don't want to have your face in there. You can always do a top-down sort of video format, Just make the food. You don't even have to say anything.
Like what Telande was
I mean, even if you look at, apart from even the top-down approach, I mean, let's say you make music, right? You don't need to necessarily say things. You could have maybe visualizers, you could have like an animation, then have that, your music in the background. Just explore other alternatives to expressing that creativity that might not necessarily require your face. It could be your voice. It could be just, something else, just not necessarily your face. But in some cases, you would also need to take the challenge of putting yourself out there, because as much as it might seem scary, you'd start putting yourself out there and you realize, oh, okay, I can actually do this. Of course, your first or second or third video might not be your best, but with time you'd lean into it and hopefully like you figure it out from there. So I think it's more of just exploring where you can start from and then gradually building from there.
Yeah, I also think that it's about prioritizing. Do you want people to really get to know what you can do?
Yeah,
right.
That's true.
And it's like even with conventional jobs, there's so many people who I feel didn't want to be in certain jobs, but sometimes out of necessity, they found themselves in those jobs.
That's
and
right.
then they just took it up, and then they became, and everyone credits them, and that person may not talk about passion per se, but then he found himself, or he thrust himself into that environment, and it did work. Now, in relation to like copyright, because I know that's also a thing.
So sorry, before copyright, I'll
Yeah.
just give a practical example with
Right.
myself in relation to what you said. So I never was the person that thought I could do anything graphic design related.
Okay.
I used to actually literally say to myself that I couldn't do graphic design. But then there was one time I thought to myself, like, okay, why not just change the way I think about the whole thing? Give it a try, watch tutorials, try. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, right? Because I needed someone to do a logo for me, and he was just like tossing me around all over the place. So I ended up like playing around, learning how to do it, practicing, and eventually I actually became good enough to actually charge people for it.
Okay.
All right. And that was something that I thought I couldn't do, but from just practicing, trying, you know. So sometimes you just need to give it a push, you know, just try. You might not be the best the first time, but eventually like things will. One thing I've noticed with TikTok creators, particularly that guy that normally, a number of them, a guy and then a girl, I don't remember their names, but a few of them, when you interview them, most of them, they tell you that, oh, when I was in school, I was a very quiet person. Or when I was here, I was a very quiet person. But then out of maybe sometimes boredom in their room, they're like, okay, let me just flip the camera on and try this.
Mind you, a lot of these TikTok creators became a thing in 2020 when everyone
during the pandemic,
yeah.
you know.
So that may be a thing.
Yeah.
So in terms of copywriting, right? So I've realized that on YouTube, for example, they are quick to like take down videos. What accounts for things like that? Because or even you apply for authentication, and then they tell you that, oh, this thing is like the content is not yours. What's that all about?
All right, so the whole thing.
And how do you protect your stuff?
That's a good question. So the whole thing about copyright, it basically is just there to protect creatives in the first place, you know. But of course, not everything is done manually. Most of them are done by bots, you know, that are written, code that's written to handle all of those things, you know. So on Instagram, it's not as heavy as on YouTube, but there are times when on Instagram, depending on the content you put out, you might get messages.
So there are algorithms that stop.
So they'll scan, and then, you know, based on the sound attached or based on something that's put there. But on Instagram, you get away with most often, and you get away with it often unless it's an extremely popular video or sound that has certain restrictions, such that if you don't credit them, you might end up taking the post down completely. That's happened to me a couple of times where the post.
So you just need to credit. Is that what it is?
So two things. You need to use content fairly.
Okay.
If it's your own content, make sure to indicate that's your own content. If it's
how you indicate it, how like all right, you stated there. Or?
Yeah, so it varies for different platforms. I think on YouTube you can add that in the description of the video. If you use some particular sounds and all of those things. On Instagram, oftentimes
if it's yours.
If it's yours,
yeah.
That's what I'm saying. If it's yours, it's yours. So you just put out there. Okay. Make sure that this is something. Describe your description should be good enough to show that this is content that you have put out.
Right.
Right. And if you're a smaller creator, it's important to do that. But once you get big, people are already associate that type of content with it. So once it's coming from your account, people know that it's an original creation. Even though with video, you'd still want to put in there that this is a production from so-and-so, blah, 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 just in case someone picks it up. You know, so from your end, what you want to do is to make sure that you have enough information on your page to prove that the content is yours. Because there's been multiple times where people make pieces of content, and because it's not very clear that the content belongs to them, somebody else steals it, the content goes viral, and they now have to come around and be like, okay, this content is mine, and back and forth and all of those things. So just make sure you put enough description out there to show that this content is from your page, it's yours. Put all the relevant information you need to put on there so that if somebody picks it up, some pages are even explicit by saying that do not use any of my content without letting me know or without reaching out to me first or reaching out to my team. So when you're starting out, it's important to be mindful of some of those things too. Make sure that your page is clear, that you are, let's say, if you're a painter, it's clear that, okay, I'm a painter, I make this type of artwork, whatsoever, you know, so that when somebody picks it up, at least they can reference you. But you would still encounter people using your content without properly crediting you. So that happens as well.
Why is content king? You mentioned it in your build up to this. Yeah. Why is content king? Like why is it so important now more than ever? Or we are just exaggerating everything?
Yeah, it's important. Like it's more important now because now we have a lot more content out there.
Okay.
And for your content to really stand out or to really get people to engage, your content needs to be good. The competition out there is a lot, especially in most niches, you know. Even if it's a niche where the competition is not much, you still want your content to be exciting and interesting enough. Plus, like you mentioned earlier, attention span of people is very short these days. That's why in social media marketing, there's something we call a scroll stopper, for instance, right? It's basically the piece of your content, the first 3 seconds of a video or an image that you use that is good enough or catchy enough or shocking enough or distracting enough to stop somebody from scrolling on whatever they're doing on social media to pay attention to that particular piece
Or
of
like what they
content.
do on YouTube and give
Exactly, all those things, you know, YouTube, like what they
Using
do on
the
YouTube
thumbnails where someone
you know,
is-
so the world's biggest plane, they do a plane with like 5,000 windows or something, you know, so stuff like that. You need to be able, because oftentimes when you run an ad on social
But it's
media,
getting tacky, isn't it?
yeah, it is.
Or it doesn't
So,
matter.
I mean,
As
if
long
it
as
gets
it-
the job done, but then
Okay.
these days, YouTube and other platforms are starting to flag some of these things as misleading.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah, exactly.
so,
That's what's come to.
Yes,
Yeah.
so
yeah.
they are becoming a tiny bit stricter with some of these things.
But,
You know?
you
So
know.
if it's misleading, yes, you might end up getting into trouble long term. But
So there's a need to put out more content because that's what
yeah,
will bring
more
you
good content or quality
more.
content.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It's very
More good
important.
content. Yeah.
So basically, to wrap things up,
Yeah.
you have to be authentic
Yeah.
because that genuinely gets you a following.
Mm-hmm.
Then you build a community around the authenticity, right?
And have a strategy.
have a strategy
Yeah.
to like push that what you are putting out, the content you are creating, right? And then to monetize, to ensure that like that's creating some money, like a stream of income, right?
All right.
Awesome. What? Any last words? Anyway?
I think the only other thing I would add is to, like you said, you know, just be authentic and also don't be scared to when there's the need for it. Don't be scared to try out new things. You know, try out new content, try out new platforms. You know, try out. For instance, some people didn't see much success with Instagram, but they tried TikTok and then things worked out for them. So don't be scared to try out new platforms and new forms of content. So that's basically what I'll wrap up.
Yeah, so don't be scared. Like it's I think that's so important for everybody. Don't be scared to try something new because every 5 to 10 years in this space we are in, you'd have to reinvent yourself in order to make some good income.
All right.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's always
It's always
pleasure,
yeah. So
thanks for having me.
see you guys soon.
All right.
All right, bye.